Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy stories of workplace comeuppance and standing up for what's right, hit that subscribe button to join the journey. Let's dive into how I turned the tables on my second manager who thought cutting my hours would teach me a lesson, only to lose his bonus in the process. I started at this company full of hope, a new job at a mid-sized retail chain, eager to prove myself. The work wasn't glamorous, stocking shelves, ringing up customers, but it paid the bills. My first manager, Sarah, was tough but fair, always clear about expectations. I thrived under her, hitting sales targets and earning praise. Then, Sarah got promoted and everything changed. Enter Mike, my second manager, a guy with a smirk that screamed trouble. He strutted in like he owned the place, tossing out orders without context. I didn't mind at first. I'm a team player. But Mike had a way of singling people out, especially me. I'd been Employee of the Month twice, so maybe he saw me as a threat. Within weeks, I noticed my schedule shrinking. Full shifts turned into half-days, then barely anything. When I asked, Mike just shrugged, saying, "Gotta balance the team." I knew something was off, but I kept my head down, hoping it'd pass. The cuts kept coming, week after week, until I was barely scraping 15 hours. My paycheck dwindled, and rent was looming. I'd always been reliable, never late, always covering shifts. So why me? I started noticing patterns. Mike favored his buddies, giving them prime hours. Meanwhile, I got scraps. One day, I overheard him laughing with a coworker, saying he'd teach me a lesson for questioning his scheduling. That stung. I wasn't just a number. I was busting my ass for this place. I tried talking to him, keeping it professional, asking what I could improve. He brushed me off, saying, "Just do your job." Frustration built, but I wasn't about to quit. I needed this job, and I wasn't going to let Mike push me out. That's when I started paying closer attention to how he ran things. Mike wasn't just unfair. He was sloppy. He'd leave reports half-finished, delegate his work, and take credit for everything. I started documenting things, schedules, his comments, even his lessons. I wasn't plotting yet, just covering my bases. The company had a bonus system for managers based on store performance. Mike was obsessed with his, always bragging about his numbers. But those numbers, they came from us, the team he was screwing over. I noticed he'd fudge reports to make sales look better than they were. Nothing blatant, but enough to raise eyebrows. I kept quiet, biding my time. If he wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules. I started chatting with coworkers, piecing together how Mike operated. Turns out, I wasn't the only one he was targeting. My coworker, Lisa, had her hours cut too, after she called out Mike's buddy for slacking. Another guy, Tom, got stuck with night shifts for attitude. Mike's lessons were his way of keeping control. But control only works if no one pushes back. I started digging into the company's policies, reading the employee handbook cover to cover. There was a section on manager accountability tied to performance metrics. Bonuses weren't guaranteed. They depended on accurate reports and team feedback. Mike's fudged numbers were a weak spot. I also learned HR had an anonymous tip line for workplace issues. I wasn't ready to use it yet, but it was an option. My hours were still shrinking, and I was barely making rent. I needed a plan, fast. I started tracking Mike's reports, comparing them to actual sales data I could access. The discrepancies were small but consistent, enough to boost his bonus metrics. I saved screenshots, time-stamped them, and kept a log. It wasn't just about me anymore. Mike was cheating the whole team. His buddies got cushy shifts while the rest of us struggled. I talked to Lisa and Tom, keeping it casual, asking if they'd noticed anything off. They had, but they were too scared to act. I couldn't blame them. Jobs were hard to come by. But I wasn't about to let Mike's ego tank my livelihood. I started dropping hints in team meetings, asking innocent questions about sales figures. Mike didn't like that, but he couldn't call me out without exposing himself. The turning point came when Mike cut my hours to 10 in a single week. 10 hours. I couldn't survive on that. He smirked when he handed me the schedule, saying, "Maybe you'll learn to stay in line." That was it. The gloves were off. I knew I had enough evidence to make waves, but I had to be smart. HR wasn't going to care about my feelings. They needed proof. I compiled everything: schedules, reports, screenshots, even notes from coworkers who'd seen Mike's lessons firsthand. I anonymized it all, making sure nothing traced back to me. The tip line was my next step, but I needed one more piece. Mike's bonus review was coming up, and I knew he was banking on it. If I timed this right, I could hit him where it hurt. I submitted the tip to HR, detailing Mike's report fudging and unfair scheduling. I included dates, numbers, and screenshots, everything airtight. I didn't mention my hours directly. I framed it as a team issue. The last thing I wanted was to look like I had a personal vendetta. HR responded within days, saying they'd investigate. I kept working my measly shifts, acting like nothing was up. Mike had no idea what was coming. I noticed him getting cocky, talking about his bonus like it was already in the bank. Meanwhile, I was double-checking my evidence, making sure I hadn't missed anything. The store's performance was solid, but Mike's adjustments were about to bite him. I just had to wait. A week later, HR called Mike in for a meeting. He came back looking rattled, but he didn't say anything. I kept my head down, stocking shelves like always. Rumors started swirling. Something about an audit. My coworkers were nervous, but I stayed calm. I'd done my part. Now it was up to HR. The next day, Sarah, my old manager, showed up to assist with operations. Mike was still there, but he was quieter, less smug. I overheard him arguing with someone on the phone about misunderstandings. I knew the net was tightening. My hours were still low, but I could feel the tide turning. I kept documenting, just in case HR needed more. They didn't. My tip had been enough. The audit results came in, and Mike's bonus was canceled. Not reduced, canceled. HR found enough discrepancies to question his leadership. He wasn't fired, but he was on thin ice. The best part? He had no idea who'd reported him. I played dumb, even when he started grilling the team. My hours slowly crept back up, and Sarah took over scheduling temporarily. She didn't mess around. Everyone got fair shifts again. Mike tried to save face, acting like nothing was wrong, but his buddies were grumbling. They'd lost their cushy setup too. I kept my evidence locked away, just in case he tried something else. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Looking back, I don't regret a thing. Mike thought he could bully me into submission, but he picked the wrong fight. Corporate justice isn't perfect, but it worked this time. I'm still at the company, and Mike's been demoted to a smaller store. My hours are back to normal, and I'm saving up again. The team's stronger now, and we're all watching out for each other. If you're dealing with a bad boss, don't just take it. Document everything and know your rights. Subscribe to catch more stories like this, where the little guy wins. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. The aftermath of Mike's demotion was surreal. The store felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. My coworkers started opening up, sharing their own run-ins with Mike. Lisa told me he'd once threatened to fire her for taking a sick day. Tom admitted he'd almost quit because of the night shifts. We'd all been fighting our own battles, but my move gave us a chance to regroup. Sarah's return as interim manager helped a lot. She wasn't perfect, but she listened and didn't play favorites. I kept my evidence file hidden, just in case Mike tried to come back. He didn't. Word got around that he was on probation at his new store. I didn't feel bad for him. He'd made his choices. My focus was on rebuilding my savings and keeping my head down. The company didn't make a big deal about Mike's bonus cancellation, but the team knew. Whispers about someone tipping off HR kept everyone guessing. I never said a word, not even to Lisa or Tom. Anonymity was my shield, and I wasn't about to drop it. The store's numbers stayed strong, proving Mike's leadership wasn't the key. I started taking on extra shifts, making up for lost time. Sarah noticed and put in a good word for me with upper management. I wasn't looking for a promotion, just respect. Slowly, I was getting it back. Mike's buddies were less vocal now, stuck with the same rules as everyone else. The balance was restored, but I stayed vigilant. I learned a lot from this whole mess, especially about workplace politics. Power trips like Mike's thrive in silence. If no one speaks up, nothing changes. I wasn't a hero, just someone who'd had enough. Reading the employee handbook was my first step. It gave me the tools to fight back. I also learned to trust my instincts. When Mike's smirk felt wrong, it was. When his lessons seemed personal, they were. Documenting everything was tedious, but it saved me. Every screenshot, every note, it all mattered. I shared tips with Lisa and Tom, showing them how to track their hours too. We weren't just co-workers anymore. We were a team with a common goal. HR's investigation wasn't perfect, but it worked because I was thorough. I'd heard horror stories of tips being ignored, so I made sure my report was bulletproof. No emotion, just facts, dates, numbers, discrepancies. I even double-checked the company's bonus policy to make sure I wasn't wasting my time. It paid off. Mike's demotion sent a message. Nobody's untouchable. I started wondering what else I could do to protect myself. The handbook mentioned training programs, so I signed up for one. It wasn't much, just a course on inventory management, but it showed I was serious. Plus, it looked good on my record. Mike's shadow was fading, and I was moving forward. The store's vibe shifted for the better. Sarah brought back team huddles, something Mike had scrapped. We started sharing ideas again, like we did before he showed up. I suggested a new display setup that boosted sales by 5%. Sarah loved it and gave me credit in front of everyone. That felt good, not gonna lie. My paycheck was steady again, and I could finally stop stressing about rent. Lisa and Tom were doing better too. We'd check in with each other, making sure no one was getting shorted. Mike's lessons had backfired. They'd made us stronger. I kept my evidence file, though. You never know when you'll need it. I started thinking about the bigger picture. Mike wasn't the only bad manager out there. Every company has one, and employees like me are usually the ones who pay the price. I wasn't about to become a crusader, but I wanted to be ready. I kept reading up on labor laws, just in case. The internet's full of resources, employee rights, complaint processes, even templates for HR reports. I bookmarked a few, sharing them with Lisa. She was skeptical at first, but after Mike, she was all in. We weren't looking for trouble, just fairness. The store was running smoothly, but I knew things could change. New managers, new problems, same old story. Mike's demotion wasn't the end of the drama, though. One of his buddies, Greg, tried to stir things up. He'd grumble about snitches during breaks, eyeing everyone suspiciously. I ignored him. He didn't have Mike's clout, and Sarah wasn't having it. She called him out for slacking, and he backed off. It was satisfying, watching Mike's little empire crumble. The team was tighter now, and even the newer hires felt the difference. We weren't just clocking in and out. We were building something. My hours were stable, and I was even saving for a vacation. Small wins, but they added up. I wasn't letting my guard down, though. Not yet. I started mentoring a new hire, Alex, showing him the ropes. He reminded me of myself when I started, eager but clueless. I told him to keep track of his hours and speak up if something felt off. He laughed, thinking I was paranoid, but I just smiled. He'd learn. Sarah noticed my initiative and hinted at a team lead role. I wasn't sure I wanted it. More responsibility, more headaches. But it was nice to be seen as more than a shelf stalker. Mike's lesson had backfired in every way. He'd tried to break me, but I'd come out stronger. My evidence file stayed locked away, a reminder of what I could do if pushed. Looking back, I realized how much I'd grown. A year ago, I would have just taken the hour cuts and complained to my friends. Now I knew how to fight smart. Mike's mistake was underestimating me, thinking I'd roll over. He didn't expect me to read the fine print or use the system against him. I wasn't proud of getting him demoted. That wasn't the goal. I just wanted fairness. The bonus cancellation was a bonus for me, in a way. It showed that the system could work if you played it right. I wasn't naive, though. Not every company listens, and not every tip works. I got lucky, but I also got prepared. The store's now the best it's been since I started. Sarah's still interim, but there's talk of her staying permanently. I'm rooting for her. She's earned it. My hours are full, my savings are growing, and I'm even thinking about taking that training course further. Maybe I'll go for that team lead spot after all. Mike's gone, his buddies are quiet, and the team's solid. I still check my schedule every week, just to be sure. Old habits die hard. If you're in a tough spot at work, don't just grit your teeth. Learn the rules, document everything, and don't be afraid to act. It's not about revenge, it's about respect. Months later, I heard Mike was struggling at his new store. Word was, he was pulling the same stunts, favoritism, fudged reports. But this time, he didn't have the same pull. His new team wasn't as forgiving, and he was under scrutiny from day one. I didn't gloat, I just felt relieved. The system wasn't perfect, but it caught up to him twice. Back at our store, things were running like clockwork. Sarah implemented some of my display ideas across the chain, and sales kept climbing. I got a small raise, not much, but enough to notice. Lisa and Tom were thriving too, taking on more responsibilities. We'd all learned from Mike's mess, and we weren't going back. I started a group chat with a few coworkers, a safe space to vent or share tips. It wasn't anything formal, just a way to stay connected. We'd swap stories about other stores, other managers. Turns out, Mike's type wasn't rare. But neither were people like us, workers who'd had enough. I shared what I'd learned about documenting issues, and Lisa added links to labor law sites. Tom was quieter but always chimed in with practical advice. The chat became our little rebellion, a way to stay ready. My evidence file was still there, untouched but updated with new schedules. I wasn't paranoid, just realistic. You never know when you'll need to fight again. The company sent out a survey about workplace satisfaction, and I filled it out honestly. I didn't mention Mike by name, but I praised Sarah's leadership and suggested more transparency in scheduling. I don't know if anyone read it, but it felt good to speak up. The store's numbers were up, and corporate was taking notice. They even sent a regional manager to visit, something that hadn't happened in years. She was impressed, asking for input from the team. I spoke up about fair hours and accountability, keeping it general. Sarah backed me up, and the regional manager took notes. For once, it felt like we were being heard. I started thinking about my future at the company. I wasn't planning to stay forever. Retail's tough, and I had bigger dreams. But for now, it was stable, and I was learning. The training course gave me skills I could use elsewhere, like inventory tracking and team coordination. I even started a side hustle, selling custom display designs online. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Mike's lesson had pushed me to think bigger, to take control of my path. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something. My coworkers noticed, asking for advice on their own side gigs. We were all growing, in our own ways. The team's dynamic was stronger than ever. We'd cover for each other, share tips, even hang out after shifts. It wasn't just about work anymore. We'd built trust. Sarah kept the huddles going, and they actually meant something now. I suggested a rotating schedule to keep things fair, and she ran with it. No one got stuck with bad shifts, and no one felt left out. Mike's reign felt like a distant memory, but it had left its mark. We were more aware, more united. I kept my evidence file, though, just a habit now. I also started mentoring Alex more formally, helping him navigate the company. He was picking it up fast. I got an email from HR about the tip line, a follow-up asking if I had more concerns. I didn't, but I saved the email. It was proof the system worked, at least sometimes. I replied, keeping it vague, thanking them for acting. They didn't need to know it was me. The store was humming along, and I was focused on my next steps. I applied for another training program, this one on leadership. It was a stretch, but why not? Mike had underestimated me, and I wasn't about to do the same. My savings were solid, my side hustle was growing, and I was sleeping better. Small wins, big impact. Looking back, Mike's lesson was a gift in disguise. It forced me to step up, to learn the game and play it better. I wasn't just a worker bee anymore. I was strategic. I knew my rights, my value, and how to protect both. The company wasn't perfect, far from it, but I'd carved out a space where I could thrive. Lisa and Tom were doing the same, building their own paths. We'd all been through the ringer, but we came out tougher. Mike's demotion was just the start. The Real win was our resilience. I kept my evidence file, not out of fear, but as a reminder, I could handle whatever came next. The regional manager's visit led to some changes. They rolled out a new scheduling system, one that required manager approval from corporate. No more fudged hours or favoritism, at least, not easily. Sarah was made permanent manager, and we all celebrated. She wasn't perfect, but she was fair, and that's what mattered. I took on the team lead role part-time, testing the waters. It came with more work, but also more say in how things ran. I used it to push for better training for new hires, like Alex. The store was a well-oiled machine now, and I was part of that. Mike's shadow was gone, but his lesson lingered: never let someone else define your worth. I started sharing my story with others, not the details, but the lessons. Document everything. Know your rights. Don't let a bad boss break you. Friends from other jobs reached out, asking how I'd pulled it off. I told them it wasn't magic, just preparation and timing. The internet helped. Forums, legal sites, even YouTube videos on workplace rights. I wasn't an expert, just someone who'd learned the hard way. My side hustle was picking up, too, enough to consider going full-time someday. The store was my foundation, but I was building something bigger. Mike's lesson had backfired in every way possible. I wasn't just surviving, I was winning. So here I am, still at the store, still growing, still watching my back. Mike's gone, but the world's full of Mikes. I'm ready for them. My evidence file's still there, my coworkers are tight, and my future's open. Corporate justice isn't always clean, but it's real if you work for it. Document, plan, act, that's the formula. If you're stuck under a bad boss, don't just take it. Fight smart like I did. Thanks for listening to my story, and if you want more tales of standing up and winning, hit that subscribe button. It's a wild world out there, but we've got this. See you in the next one.